I've got moisturiser in my eyes, so I'm probably going to look drunk. Bet you've never heard that at the start of a car review before. Okay, so if you have bought one of these recently, you might want to not watch this because it's not going to go that well for you. Kia, committing crimes against grammar and punctuation since
the Big Bang.
Well, not quite that long, but not far off actually. The first Kia XCEED, 2006. No, that's better. Better? Anyway, mercifully Kia decided to drop the whole rogue apostrophe thing in 2018 when the third generation car came out. Arguably removing the most interesting thing about the XCEED. Because even though the first generation XCEED was decent and the second generation car was even decenter, it was always the sort of thing that would make you say, this is kind of good this like. But then you would never tell your friends or anybody who asked to actually go out and buy one because, well, you know. But again, it was good. And this latest one, the third one, is especially good. Because while the first two cars did the groundwork of overcoming the XCEED's Korean origins, it soaked up all the overtly patronising, this is kind of good this like, type stuff. The third one is just like part of the hatchback furniture. Very good in very many ways and highly recommendable. But this isn't a plain old XCEED. This is an XCEED. Yep, no rogue apostrophes this time, but Kia's crimes against the English language continue, unabated. Also, it's officially spelled in caps lock, even though the other XCEEDs aren't. Oh well, we should probably talk about what the X bit means then. I don't know. Really? I don't. You see, today's XCEED range looks like this. There's a 5-door hatch, an estate, also 5 doors, a Pro XCEED, that used to be 3 doors, but now it's a fastback and now also 5 doors. And this thing, also a fastback, ostensibly, also 5 doors, definitely. So, I've got the official XCEED hardback book here. Maybe this will clear things up. Steeply angled fastback tailgate, Sits 60mm higher than XCEED 5-door hatchback. Newly designed Ice Cube headlights. Well, that's nonsense. They look nothing like Ice Cube. We can fix that.
You better check yourself or you wreck yourself, cause I'm bad for your health.
Much better.
Love it.
Okay, here we go. Kia XCEED provides a sporty alternative to larger traditional SUV models, with comparable cabin and luggage space to an SUV in a more compact body. Right. I'm sorry, but I just don't understand this at all. It looks and drives exactly like you would expect from a family hatchback. You can't just give something a name and then say that it becomes that thing, right?
I am the Duke of Kidderminster and extremely rich.
I didn't realise you were nobility.
Nor did I.
So, SUV. Well, for a start, you are not high in here at all, unless you're sat in here thinking that this in any way feels like an SUV, in which case you could possibly be high.
Smoke weed every day.
Okay, let's dig deeper into this because it is baffling me a bit. So, the luggage space thing. You'll see here that Kia's claims about SUV boot space sort of ring true. It does have more than a standard XCEED, and it is indeed comparable to a typical C-segment crossover SUV type thingy. That said, if it's a XCEED with boot space you're after, then you'll want the XCEED Estate. Also, the max capacity of the XCEED isn't really that good, what with it not being that tall or long. Yeah, that. Kia can call this an SUV type car as much as it likes, but the fact is, it's a fastback. A lot like this dreadful thing, in fact. So it has a low roofline. So that means that if you're a bit taller, as I am, and your car has a sunroof, as mine does, then you can expect your hair to be scraping along the roof lining. Or if it's not, you will definitely have this feeling that the roof is closing in on you. And that's not really a nice feeling in any car, but it's certainly not a feeling that you would expect or ever get from an actual SUV. Also, rear leg space is okay, but the wheelbase of the XCEED is exactly the same as the other non-caps lock XCEEDs. So Kia can't really make any additional legroom claims. In fact, it's only any longer than the standard 5-door XCEED hatchback because the overhangs are longer at the front and the back. And it's taller because it sits on higher springs. So this is one of those off-roady type things, a bit like the Passat All-Track or the Audi All-Road. So it's for countryside types with slightly muddy driveways. Nope, this has no additional off-road capability. This is basically just a front-wheel drive 2.5 hatchback with an especially large gap in the wheel arches. Doesn't have like a trick traction control system even. Having said that, to be fair to Kia, the company doesn't claim that it's an off-roader. And what that leads to basically is the most egregious thing about the XCEED, that it gives you the clumsy driving experience of an SUV type crossover, but with none of the benefits. So usually with a crossover, right, you can deal with the sort of tall spring turbulence because what you're getting with that is that high riding, good visibility thing that people who buy those sorts of cars like. They call it commanding, that feeling of being on top of everybody else. This has that like wobbly characteristic, but you're actually still sat really low in the car. Plus that thing I said before about it feeling actually a bit cramped. In fact, I'm finding the whole driving experience of this thing a little bit weird and actually quite unenjoyable. The body control is quite poor, it bounces around a lot, but it's also got that like big wheeled harshness. I suppose you could fix that with smaller wheels like this is on 18s, of course it is. Even though they look tiny because of the massive wheel arches. It also has poor visibility, right? Well, not poor, but not great. Front is as you would expect, standard hatchback. I'm just looking now, actually, these pillars are quite thin, pretty good. But back over visibility is rubbish because the screen is really shallow because of the way the car's been styled, and the C-pillars are huge. They are thicker than Donald Trump's foundation.
I happen to feel good about it, but who knows?
It's just all a bit disjointed. So you've got the whole ride quality thing, right? But it also feels like the steering is in sport mode while the throttle is at staring into the fridge drunk at 2 a.m. mode. Proper sluggish, really slow response, especially when you're pulling away. So this is like a mechanical oxymoron. The same could be said for the engine and the gearbox. They don't really seem to click together very well either. So this car here has a 1.4 litre turbo engine and a 7-speed twin clutch automatic. So the gear changes themselves are quick and smooth enough, and you would expect that, right? But all of this engine's punch is in a really small band in the mid-range. It does not reward you to rev this engine hard. So what happens is, right, you'll be tooling around town, gearbox will take you into like third gear, you'll slow down a little bit, gearbox will stay in third gear, and then if you need to put a little bit more throttle on to speed up slightly, all of a sudden the gearbox will stick you into second and you'll get this surge of power that kind of feels unnatural. Maybe not unnatural, but just like clumsy. Also, it has a sport mode, but I can't really figure out what it does apart from make the numbers on the instrument display here italic, so they lean forward. Although that's not quite true, because the other thing I've noticed is that it makes the gearbox put the engine in its noisiest zone at all times. Change up the gear, man! You'll be in and out of sport mode quicker than Nigel Farage visiting a mosque. It's generally very economical though, so petrol engine, automatic gearbox, and I'm getting 40.5 miles per gallon average, and that's mostly around the door, so that's really good. And actually, the cabin is very nice. Now, it was difficult for me not to get bamboozled by the bright yellow stuff in my particular car because, of course, Kia had sent me a first edition. That means it's got everything thrown at it, including this seat cloth that looks a bit like the seat cloth you might get in a Lamborghini with the yellow shapes. But looking past that stuff, you can generally see that this cabin is a nice piece of work. It has soft touch plastic in all the right places, and Kia is very good at doing that cabin design where the switchgear is like intuitive and it's all solid and it's lovely to use. It just feels like a high quality product, right? Good ergonomics, good layout, and good infotainment. In fact, the software is as good as the cabin design. Bit fiddly at first maybe, but you quickly get used to it. It's all good. It's also pretty practical. Now, it's by no means startling. This center console storage box is quite small, but you know, decent glovey, and door pockets that aren't sizable, but they are designed thoughtfully. The end of them is actually quite far away from you, so they've angled the base so that if you put a bottle there, it's sticking out towards you, so you can grab it easily. I actually don't know why that bottle was there. I didn't put it there, but that did make it look like I thought through this test, so I'm gonna leave that sequence in and then completely unravel it by leaving this bit in as well. We're at the cutting edge of door pocket chat here, people. But like no more or less practical than you would expect from any bog standard family hatchback. Indeed, from the bog standard family hatchback with which this shares its uncapped name, if that sentence makes sense. The 5-door Seed, basically. Still, this will all make sense, possibly, if the XCEED is priced well. And so... What? Yep, this car costs $2,000 more than a 5-door Seed for a little bit more boot space, bigger wheel arches, and a worse driving experience. Also, you could have Kia's actual SUV, the Sportage, which is much more practical than this and very good. Proper SUV, right? You know, high driving position, and more importantly, vaguely terrifying to the other road users down there. Down there. That's where you want your SUV money to go, right? And so you might say the Kia has taken the idea of an SUV and made it worse. So in that sense, they probably should have called it the Recede. Recede. I have to say, right, this is not a bad car. In fact, it's a good car. I've kind of hooked the review on Kia's marketing nonsense, right, and probably made the car sound worse than I actually think it really is. It arguably does look better than the standard Ceed, and it does have a big boot with a massive and very useful rear hole. And also, like the rest of the Ceed range, it's very safe, it's very well warranted, and it's very well equipped as standard. So that's that. Wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but wouldn't necessarily judge you if you felt differently and you bought one anyway. Decent car, right? All the dynamic criticism comes when you place the car under the microscope, which it is of course my job to do. I would expect that most buyers wouldn't do that and would find this car perfectly agreeable. But don't dwell on that too much, because if you do, then you'll realise that my job is ultimately pointless. But if you want to know what I'd buy if I had around £22,000 to £25,000 for a hatchback, I'd buy one of these. Yep, a Peugeot 3008. Bet you didn't expect us to say that. And that's because I said 3008 instead of 308. I've got crossovers on the brain. I'd buy a Peugeot 308. In my opinion, that is still the best non-VWG hatchback you can buy, including the Mazda 3. So there you go, the end. Thanks for watching. Please hit subscribe and I will see you soon. Bye. This is kind of good, this, like. 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 This is kind of good, this, like.